Hi everybody and welcome to Betting Expert. My name is Adam and today I'm going to be taking you through my betting tips and predictions for UFC 249 this weekend. I really like this card and I think there are going to be a great deal of upsets. Let's get straight into it. Betting tip number 1 is a parlay between Calvin Kattar and Vicente Luque. I think both guys have great chances at winning their fight, and adding their odds together just makes for a bit more valued bet. Luque is facing Nico Price, a guy he's beaten before, which gives him some statistical significance. We know that about 6 or 7 out of 10 times, the guy who won the first fight wins the rematch. I also think Luque's striking is way better than Nico Price's, and his footwork is just better. He can take a shot, he has a great chin. I like him against Price. Then, Kattar, the second guy on the parlay, I think he just has all the tools to beat Jeremy Stephens. If he can avoid the power punch, maybe win a decision, I think he has all the tools, and I think he wins this fight maybe 8 out of 10 times. That's betting tip number 1. My second betting tip is Rosenstrike beats Francis Ngannou in round number 1. We know that heavyweight fights have this randomness to the outcome. When you're looking at fights in the heavyweight division that end in a knockout, 6 out of 10 times they do so in round 1. That gives us a bit of line value on Rosenstrike, and I think he has the striking background to really give Ngannou problems. I like him in this fight, and I'm picking him for my betting tip number 2. Alright guys, so betting tip number 3, third and final betting tip, is Justin Gaethje beats Tony Ferguson in round number 1. Now, I know you might be thinking that I've chosen all the underdogs, but I really think there are going to be a lot of upsets in this card. So let's see how it plays out. I think Gaethje is a bad matchup for Ferguson. Ferguson is very hittable. He's been dropped many times in his career. I see Gaethje coming out in the first round with a lot of momentum. It usually takes Ferguson quite some time to find his rhythm and get started, and he starts to chop down his opponents. But I think Gaethje has about 10 minutes to finish Ferguson, and I think he actually has a great chance of doing so. He's the underdog right now, and I think he has the potential to do it in the first round actually. There's a lot of value there, so that's my pick for betting tip number 3. Alright guys, those were my 3 main betting tips for UFC 249, but there's still the rest of the card. So let's have some quick fire predictions for the rest of the fights. We have Ryan Spann against Sam Alvey. I think Spann is just a little bit overrated. Alvey has the experience advantage enough to make his odds of about 4 something really valuable. We also have Michelle Waterson against Carla Esparza. I think Esparza, being an ex-champion in the division, maybe means that she just might be lacking some motivation to take on a contender like Michelle Waterson. Maybe that gives Waterson some line value. I think it does. I think she's the more valued pick in that fight. We also have the rematch between Donald Cerrone and Anthony Pettis. I think Cerrone, judging Cerrone from his last 3 fights, I think is not fair really, because he's fought McGregor, which is a terrible matchup. Ferguson, I never expected Cerrone to be able to hang with Ferguson, and then Gaethje, which is also a really bad matchup for him. And we've seen before in Cerrone's career that he's able to bounce back from losing 3 fights in a row. Pettis, on the other hand, is actually the guy that I would say has declined more throughout his career. He's lost 8 of his last 12 fights, and I think he's looked completely hopeless in at least his last 2 against Diaz and Ferreira. So I think Cerrone has the value there. We also have another heavyweight fight. We have Yorgan De Castro taking on Greg Hardy. Like I said before, there's a lot of randomness in heavyweight fights. I think Greg Hardy you can tell he's new in the sport. I think he has some amateurish tendencies. He leaves his chin in the air. He I think we've seen some cardio issues. Not to say that Jorgen De Castro doesn't have that either, but I think De Castro has the more fluid striking, the more complete striking. I think he can give Hardy problems in the first round also. I'd pick him in the first round. Let's not forget Dominic Cruz is also returning. He's been out for 4 years. He's facing bantamweight champion Henry Cejudo. They'll fight for the title. In this fight, I'm also leaning towards the underdog. We don't really know what to expect, but we do know that Cruz has a really big physical advantage. He has the reach and size, and we also know he's a great anti-wrestler. So I think those are kind of things that make me lean more towards the underdog, the Cruz side. I'd probably pick him. We also have Bryce Mitchell going up against Charles Rosa. I think it's a really even matchup, and that's why I'm going with the underdog in that fight. And finally, we have Uriah Hall against Jacare Souza. Middleweight fight, great fight. I'd go with the more consistent of the two. I think Uriah Hall he can be a great fighter, but he's super inconsistent. And Jacare Souza is just a bit more consistent in his performances. He might be older, but I'll still go with Jacare Souza in that fight. We also have the return of UFC heavyweight legend Fabricio Verdum. He takes on Russian Alexei Oleinik. I'm going with the same narrative as with the other two heavyweight fights, where I'm leaning more towards the underdog because I think Verdum is a bit overpriced. We don't really know what to expect. He's been out. He tested positive for steroids. We don't know which Verdum will show up. But I think I'm leaning towards Oleinik. He's underpriced, probably taken by maybe a first round flash KO. Those tend to happen more frequently in the heavyweight division. Alright guys, that's all for me. Those are my UFC 249 predictions and betting tips. But I also want to hear from you guys. So if you go to Betting Expert, you can become a tipster and leave your own tips. You can enter in competitions, do whatever you like. But please remember to always gamble responsibly. Thank you.